Okay, we'll talk about Siman Yud Aleph. I was actually planning on talking about Yud Aleph and Yud Gimel, but I see that quite some people are not up to Yud Gimel, didn't do Yud Gimel yet. So I will split the share in two. I'll focus more on Yud Aleph now, and Yud Gimel we will do towards the end of the week in Hashem. Siman Yud Aleph is the halachas of Asura leba'al, Asura leba'al, mainly. And Siman Yud Gimel is about Chodshei Avchon. It's a whole different topic, so I guess Siman Yud Gimel will have to wait v'oid chazoin lamoyed. Siman Yud Aleph begins a woman that was נחשב, that she was over on, she's a Shasish, she was over on Isur Niuf with somebody else, and there was Kinu Yustire, which means that she was warned by her husband not to do it again, and then she went and she was misyached with him, Kinu Yustire. So now, therefore, since she became Asura to her husband, Machamosai, because of him, therefore she's also Asura to the Ba'al who caused her to become Asur to her husband. In such a scenario, if she gets married to the Ba'al, she has to Teitzei, if there was Kinui and Stira. But if there was no Kinui, and then afterwards Stira, rather there was only Eidim that they saw a Davar Mechayer, and the Davar Mechayer is a whole list of examples. What it is, they were kissing each other. They went into a place and they locked the door with a key. And there were one person pulled somebody out of a pit. And it means they were both in there together. If they saw her standing naked with him, and anything else which will fall into the category of davar k'iur to the eyes of the dayanim who are dealing with this scenario. So then, if the husband will divorce her as a result of this situation, as a result of specifically because of this, which is something we discussed also previously in the cases of machzir grushasei, that if the divorce comes as a result of this rumor, then she cannot marry the Ba'al. Now, and if she does marry him, so the Shulchan Aruch says, if there were children, Lo Teitzei. So the Shulchan Aruch's lashon is, if there were children, Lo Teitzei. Children from the Ba'al afterwards, which is mashma. If there's no children, she should Teitzei. Now that is essentially the summary of the part of Seif Aleph. Now, the first point that has to be taken into consideration is a maharik which is brought in the Beis Yosef on the Siman in the beginning, which says, the Beis Yosef quotes a maharik, it's mashma, there is no chiyuv to go looking for problems. That means if somebody comes and says a rumor, you ignore them. The Beis Din has no obligation to dig and look for problems. But if two Eidim come and say that there's something happened, so it was already revealed, then the Beis Din can't ignore it. But there's no obligation to go searching for Avedas. Now, what happens if there is a Davar K'iur? She gets called to Beis Din, they present her with the story, and she gives Namasla. She gives Namasla, and the Dayanim feel that this Namasla has some validity to it. It means there's a whole discussion what it is. I'm not going to get into it right now. What the definition of an amasla is, what's a valid amasla. But in other words, if the amasla comes up and it's a amasla which makes sense to the people that are listening to the case, the dayanim, then she does not become, she's ne'eman with the amasla, and it's no longer considered a davar k'iur. That is how some of the Rishonim understand the Yerushalmi. Now, the Erech Shai disagrees and says that it's not enough just to say an amasla. She also has to bring a raya on the amasla. If it's something which is really bad, not stam a k'iur, but a k'iur gadol, even in these k'iurs you have different levels dvar kiyur. It's not the same. Not every kiyur is exactly the same. And it's a kiyur gadol. The Pnei Moshe and the Yerushalmi holds that an amasla will not help in such a scenario, because if it's so big of a kiyur, even the best amasla will not be able to save you from such a thing. There are those that hold that an amasla does not help by a kiyur. This is all machlokes on how to understand the Yerushalmi, whether an amasla helps bichlal. If an amasla helps, when does it help? Do you need a raya for it or not? But in other words, each case will be determined based on the scenarios. Now, obviously, as a Rav, you will try to look at the case and see what is the scenario that needs to be taken best, and prepare a tshuva and have Rabbanim sign off with you on what the case is. You might want to rely on certain shittas lahakal, if that's the situation, that's if it's warranted by this situation. And forget, sometimes you might feel that there's a need to be the hamid hadas al tila and to take a strong stand, and then you know that there are people which will not agree with the amasla. Now, one of the things that the Shulchan Aruch mentions is that if they walked out of a dark place together, right? So, walking out of a dark place together is a very general term that can be understood in many different ways. Question is, what does it mean? Every time a married woman is seen walking out of a dark place together with a man, she's automatically ushered to her husband. It's already davar mechayer. So, Pischei Tshuva right on the spot brings from the Marshal that this is not referring to any dark place, rather it's referring to a place which is specifically fit for doing Averis, and nobody can access it. And the Pischei Tshuva brings the Mabit, which is also says it has to be outside the city, but inside the city it's not bichlal considered. It's not bichlal considered a mokum kiyur. That means that it all depends on the circumstances of the situation. According to some opinions, the Pischei Tshuva will bring you some opinions. It would be that it's a dark place, and even if it's inside the city, some say that it's only a specific place that's meyuad laveres, but only if it's outside the city. The mashmos of the Shas Tshuva says that Amo is that if it doesn't make a difference inside the city or outside the city. It doesn't make a difference if it's a mokim seiser or not a mokim seiser, as long as it's at night and it's a dark place. It's already considered a davar kiyur. And Rabbi Akiva Eiger takes the approach that it's not only davar kiyur, that's only if it's anywhere that's not a public place. If any of the divrei kiyur happen in a public place, then it's not considered a davar kiyur for this. It's an interesting Shas Tshuva Ari Devei Eloi, who I guess recognized the changing dynamics of the Jewish nation, and he says that if a man kisses a married woman publicly, that's not considered a dvar kiyur. Enough to consider it to be to passel.
Where does it say this?
Ari Devei Eloi Siman Chav Gimel. That's the truth. 100 years ago, a little bit more than that. There are other examples of divrei kiyur which come up. Each one is different. For example, if they see that she's sitting on his lap or he's sitting on her lap, that's a Pnei Moshe says it's considered dvar kiyur. If they're both in the public bathhouse and they're touching each other, it's also considered a dvar kiyur. The Avnei Nezer goes even more extreme, a different category of a dvar kiyur. If they find love letters from the noyef, from her to the noyef, or fakert, it's already from her to the noyef. If there's letters from her to the noyef which have in them discussions which are not appropriate, very not appropriate, it also could be considered a dvar kiyur enough to do it. But again, each one of these examples, as you see, these are all scenarios which have to be determined by the Bezdin, which is dealing with it. Do you put it in the category of a dvar kiyur? First you have to know, is it a dvar kiyur in the current situation? Is it considered a dvar? Could it be categorized as a dvar kiyur? Is there an amasla? Is there not an amasla? And more importantly, are you looking to solve the problem or not? So now what happens if the husband divorced her and he wants to go back to her? That we discussed in the previous siman, previous siman, that it depends what the reason was why he divorced her. First, if he divorced her because of it, if the Bezdin ordered him to divorce her, the whole discussion over there. But that's really relevant to the other ones. Now, the Shulchan Aruch says that if she marries the Ba'al and there are children, loy teitze, when there's no kinu yustira. What's the reason why there's no loy teitze? Simple reason, we don't want to create laws al habanim when there is already children in this. Out of this union, we're not going to create a situation that these kids are going to be bashmutz because of that. Now, but the Shulchan Aruch also says, if mashma from the Shulchan Aruch, if she doesn't have children, she is teitze, even when there is no kinu yustire. And the Shulchan Aruch then continues, when is this talking about? When Sherinenu ha'ir oleho ve'al hanoyef, there's rumors swirling around her and on the noyef, yoimu mechza, full day and a half, vele pasak ha'koil, and the coil that's going around did not stop. Vegam im ein lo, oy loy, oy leba'al oyvim, shirtziu ha'koil. Yeah, if there's no, she does not have enemies, he does not have enemies, the Noyef doesn't have enemies, and the husband does not have enemies which are looking to destroy this marriage, destroy her or destroy him. But once there is without that, then she's loy teitze, even if there are no children, and some even say even if there's eid echad, still should not go, still loy teitze. If there's the coil, if it's not kol ha'ir, if it's not a coil, if the coil was paisik, if it's less than a day and a half, or if there was enemies. Now, let's go through each one of these details. What's rinenu achareho? That means rinenu achareho means that there's rumors swirling around. People are talking about it. It means that the reason why people are talking about it is not that people are saying, "Oh, Adam came and said something," because then all people are saying are just repeating what the Adam said. So it's not really a koil. Adam is Adam. There's Adam of dvar kiyur, but the koil shirinu achareo, they're not meranen. There's no koil about her action. The koil is about the Adam. There was people draying zich in Bezdin, and they heard what's going on. They heard the Adam. So there's no koil rinun on her. The koil rinun is on Adam. It's really considered as an Adam without the koil even. The koil doesn't add anything to the situation. The koil that makes there should be teitze when there is no children is a koil it did not come as a result of the Adam in Bezdin. That's how the Bishmul understands it. The Drisha says that it does add to it, that the coil adds to the Adam and it makes a stronger kiyur. And Noida Behuda says that to be able to join the two together, it has to be to say that the Adam and the coil make it a much bigger problem is only when the Adam say it about somebody specific and the koil says it about the same person. That means that they're not talking that this woman is sleeping around. They're talking that this woman is with Pliny ben Pliny, and the Adam also say this woman is with Pliny ben Pliny. Now the Shulchan Aruch says the Sherinu ha'ir achareho. The city is talking about it. The Shas Tshuva Shilas David Well, he says you got to have the whole city talking about it. Not that there is a rumor circling in the city, but it is the talk of town. Now, it doesn't mean that every single person in the city has to talk about it, but it has to be a topic of conversation by a very big topic of conversation in town. Now, the fact that it says, the Shulchan Aruch says, Sheyotza koil rinenu ha'ir aleho ve'al hanoyef, means, again, like I mentioned before, it has to be not just talking negative about her, but also mentioning who the noyef is. But just making a general curl that she's sleeping around without saying who is it to is not in this category of a curl enough that she should be Asura leba'al, and if she marries him, teitze. Now, obviously, that doesn't solve if the husband divorces her because of this half coil, which really he shouldn't have, or maybe he decided he wants to and he divorced her because he can't marry her again. But still, that doesn't prevent still does not make the issur on the noyef that if he married her, she should teitze. Now, the coil also has to say that Ploini was mezaneh with Ploinis. Not stam eidei kiyur. Not that the coil is the same thing that the Eidim saw. The Eidim saw them kissing. Right? And the coil is, they're kissing. Shine. That's not enough. That's not the coil that we're talking about. Meran machareo that's oiser her to do it. What's that the loy pasak a coil? There's two ways of explaining loy pasak a coil. One is that the coil stopped. Yeah, the people stopped talking about it. It's actually a machlekes Rishonim. The Rabbeinu Avram in Ahar brings it, his opinion versus Rashi. He says that from Rashi it's mashma that it's a coil, that yotza coil, that a pasuk coil means that a new coil came out denying it. And Rabbeinu Avram in Ahar says, no, you don't need so much, like Rashi says. It's enough that the people stop talking about it. That's called pasuk coil. According to Rashi, it's mashma that if the coil just stopped and there's no new coil which denies it, it's still considered as if the coil is there. It doesn't mean that the coil got discussed. Now, it says that if there's enemies, then the coil is invalid, right? Now, a lot of times enemies are created as a result of rumors. So, when rumors come and you're going to say, well, there's a lot of people that hate her, hate him, hate this, hate that, they're bashmutzing him. So let's ignore all the coil. No, the Ritva says it doesn't work like that. The oivim, we have to know that the oivim were there before the coil started. That means we have to know that there are people who are out to get them before these rumors started. After these rumors started, we know there's going to be people who are going to hate on them and are going to be their oivim. It's not enough to say that, oh, we found oivim to them now, so let's ignore the coil. No, we have to know that the coil was done that the coil came after there was already oivim in place. Now there's also, it says that the oivim have to live in the same city where these people are talking, right? Where these people are living. Why is that? Because we have to be able to prove that the oivim created the coil. If the oivim live in a different town, you say, oh, there's oivim 10-hour drive from here, different city. It's not enough, because how do you know that the oivim here were the ones how do you know the oivim there were the ones that created the coil here? If the oivim are here, you know the coil created here. Now all of this is irrelevant today, because today you could kill somebody with a WhatsApp message. You know, you have an international, and you could send a rumor on somebody, and you could be 16 hours or 18 hours by flight away, and so that this whole thing of Ba'isa Ir doesn't apply anymore. Today, once...
Where does it say this thing of Ba'isa Ir?
That is... I have to remember. Let me Shulchan Aruch, I'll show it to you. It's not in the Lashon of Shulchan Aruch. It's in... Lashon doesn't say it in Lashon of Shulchan Aruch. One Nesikalim, I think, says... It's one right there. You have to read that. Read that one over there. It's the Bar Heitev Seif Yud Aleph. So Oivim Be'ir, the city in the people are in the city. That's what we're chayshish. See the Bar Heitev on it? Bar Heitev Seif Katan Yud Aleph. And he adds over there, Lav Dafka Oivei, it's not only Oivim of the husband, wife, or Noyef, but even Oivim of their parents.
No, it's not what he says there. I think it says that you have to daft from the city. It says even if there's no Oivim where we make to the Koil.
If you have Oivim in the city, where the Koil comes out, then you're worried that the Koil came from this Oivim. But if they have no Oivim in the city, but they have Oivim in a different town, that's what I'm talking about. If they have Oivim in a different town, Oivim in a different town, and you have no way of knowing where the Koil starts from, could you say that in those days, would you be able to say that just because it's Oivim in a different country, that means that the Koil is fake Koil? No, the fake Koil is only when the Oivim are here, Oivim Be'ir. Then, if you know that the Koil came from the Oivim, you don't have to do any chkiris, even if they're 10 hours away. If you could trace the Koil back to the Oivim and they're from a different town, you don't have to worry about it. You know for sure it's from the Oivim. We're talking about that Yotzo Koil, we don't know where it started from. Rumors are swirling, we have no idea where it started from. But we know there's Oivim. We know there's Oivim out of town, it's not enough. We know there's Oivim in town, it is enough, as long as there were Oivim before. And what I was saying is that today, with technology, Oivim, the concept of a city and concept of being local doesn't apply anymore, because you could start a rumor on somebody, people that died and people that got divorced and everything else that only on WhatsApp. Like once you found out and then you find out afterwards, it's lo yed v'lo ma'olam.
How did you find out?
Huh?
How did you find out?
Someone's out to get you. Someone's out to destroy your life. Not just somebody who can't stand you. Someone who can't stand you, could be it's his personality, could be it's your personality, could be just a clash of the two. It doesn't mean he's the oyev. Oyev means somebody who has an agenda to destroy life. I'm not telling you, I don't have a mocker for it, but that's my definition. Otherwise it would not be, it's not just somebody who has a reason to cause it to. Now, the Bach actually mentions, but we know what the Oyev means, that he didn't talk to him for 3 days, right? That's the definition of Oyev Cheshemish, but today doesn't, again, that's not the definition of Oyev that we're referring to. The Bach actually mentions, in Shas HaTshuvos, the Bach, Siman Kuf, he already discusses that in any case where there is a chashash to Bezdin that it came as a result of Oivim, we could already ignore the Koil. You don't have to ascertain with 100% certainty that there are Oivim there. And that these Oivim release the Koil. You just have to, once you know that there is over here a certain undercurrent of certain people who want to destroy this person, it's already enough. This is all what the Mechaber says. Yeah, the Mechaber says, now comes the Ramon, disagrees and says, if there's Mamash a Koil, not only Yechud the Koil Mezaneh, and there's also a Kiyur in addition to the Koil of Mezaneh, then Moitzin Oisa Afilu Mibayla. Not only can she not marry the Boyel, Afilu Mibayla, you even Moitzin. Moitzin doesn't mean he has to divorce her. It means we force him to divorce her. That's what it seems like. Moitzin means the Bezdin has an obligation to make sure that they get divorced, even if only if there is no children. If there are children, then we're not going to do it. That's pretty much Sif Aleph. Now, what happens if she gets divorced from her husband as a result of this guy? And then she went and she married somebody else. Not the Noyev. And the supposed Noyev. And she divorced the second guy, or the second guy died. Now the Noyev wants to marry her. So the Isser is still pending. Why? Because she became usher to her husband as a result of him. Therefore, the moment she became asur as a result to him, he became asur to her. However, if nises loy teitze, the lashon of Shulchan Aruch is, it's mipnei sheyotza mitachas baila biglalei. Why can't she not marry him? Because she had to leave her husband as a result, biglalei, as a result of him. Now, first of all, what you medayek from the Shulchan Aruch, it obviously only refers to if she got divorced because of him. That means that the get that the husband gave was a result of these edikir, or whatever it is, of this story. But if she did not get divorced because of this, the koil happened on Kislev. She got divorced a year later. They got into a different fight. Or the husband died. Talking about the first husband. In such a scenario, it would make sense to say she's not even asura leba'al to this guy. Why? Even if lu yitzur, she was taken asura leba'al mechamasai, should have gotten divorced from him. The fact is, he did not divorce her because of that. Which means, why did he stay married to her? The koil stopped, or whatever it is, and the husband discovered that it's not true. They found out that there was oivim, whatever the reason was. The story faded. So then, she does not become asura to the noif. According to some, it would seem maybe l'chatchila, but for sure, but the eved lo teitze. But so now, why is it that when she marries a second person, she does not marry the person who they're talking about, or they're calling the naif, yeah? She does not marry him. She marries the boil. She marries another person. And then that person dies, or the rest of us. Then she wants to marry him. Why does the mechaber say lo teitze? Probably for the same reason. Because the fact is, if the rumor was true, she would have gone to him. First reason, right? She didn't. She went to somebody else. She got divorced and she married somebody else. She didn't go to the naif. More so, there was no more rumors on her afterwards. If she was not faithful to husband number one with this guy, there should have been rumors on husband number two with this guy.
Why?
Why? Because she likes him.
Oh, the noif.
The naif, yeah. So why she suddenly stops? She only likes him when she has one husband. She doesn't like him when she doesn't. Maybe she did tshuva. Anyway, so that's why. But the eved, if it's nisis lo teitze. Another point is, and this is something which is used as a sniff in certain scenarios. In la halacha, we don't follow it. The lashon is shenesra yotza mitachas baila bigloloi. She's not allowed to marry the person, the same thing as in the first if. She's not allowed to marry the person that she got, that caused her to become asur to her husband. There's the Maharas Hasan, Tshuvas Maharas Hasan in his Tshuvas Siman Kuf Tzadik Vav, that he brings a raya from Gemara that asura leba'al is only to boil rishon, the boil that made her asur. So if she was with Ploinim and Ploinim, he made her asur to asura leba'al. Then she dumped him. She wants somebody else. Yeah? When would that apply? It's separated for a long time. And she was with somebody, Ploinim and Ploinim. He made her asura leba'al. Then she went with somebody else. Second person. Second Jew. Ba'al Sheni, we'll call him. He brings a raya from Gemara that she's mutter. To him, to the second one, to the Ba'al Sheni. He doesn't paskin like he paskins le'isur, but he brings a raya why it should be mutter. There's another Gemara which contradicts it, and based on that you have in the Shvus Yaakov that uses that Gemara to disagree and say that because of that Gemara we can't say that she's muteres. Shvus Yaakov Chelik Aleph Siman Tzadik Daled, that she's asura also to a Ba'al Sheni. And by the way, the Igris Moshe also paskins that she's asura to Ba'al Sheni. He says he doesn't use this as any sort of sniff. But there is a Shas Tshuvas Mat'ame Yitzchak from the Yitzchak of Hamburg. He was Mechut Navnei Behuda, I think. Siman Lamed Hey, where the same Raya that Shavuos Yaakov in Siman Tzadik Daled brings to say that the Boil Sheni is Asur, he explains the Gemara Punkt Verkehrt to bring it as another Raya that Boil Sheni is Mutter. Same Gemara. Same Gemara in Sanhedrin. So you have, but that's also based on the same logic. That who was the one that she became Asura to him? Now, that's about Sif Beis. In Sif Gimel, it's any place where it says Teitze B'lei Ksuba, that's obvious. Now, the next point is in Sif Daled. The Ramah over there points out that the Eidos on this Znus has to be in front of the husband and the wife. Because the Bezdin has to discuss in front of the husband, in front of the wife. And the Shailas Utshuvas by the Ramah Siman Yud Beis says that even if the Baal Din is Alim, you still have to be Mekabel Bifnei Baal Din, and otherwise the Eidos is not accepted. Rabbi Kiva Eger also holds like that in Kama Siman Tzadik Tes. Rabbi Yehuda holds that if it's a Baal Din Alim, you don't have to be Mekabel B'fonov, you could do even Shaloi Bifnei the Baal Din. In the Pischei Tshuva brings a certain Rishonim which hold what happens if a Mekabel Eidos Shaloi Baal Din in this scenario, if B'di'evet works or not. And some Achronim hold that she Asura L'Baila, if you're Mekabel Eidos, even if you're Mekabel Eidos Shaloi B'fnei Baal Din. And a lot of Achronim hold that this Eidos is worthless if it was Shaloi B'fnei Baal Din.
Baal Din is the husband or the Noyef?
Baal Din is a Noyef. And the woman. The husband didn't do anything wrong. The husband.
As if she married the Boil already.
No, didn't marry her. So well before. We might see she was afterwards also. After she married, they're going to have to be with Boil also, yeah. Now, there are two certain truths that I'm going to go through them quickly. I mentioned some of them in previous shooting. I'm going to go through them again. One is Evan-Ezer Siman Chav Daled. Over there was a wife of a Kohen which had no children, and there was a Rinun for more than a year that she's Bekiruv Adas with some chilled guy. Poiker, some guy who's not exactly the right caliber. And then, in addition to the fact that there's Rinun that she's hanging out with him, there was a colored loy pasuk that she was mizana with him. And two Eidim came. I went through this in the past. I mentioned some points of it. Two Eidim came, and say one says that he saw the Noyev going into a room with her, into her room and closing the door, and the lights went off and there was Yichud. And the second one was made on a different time that the same thing happened. So there's Eid Echad on one Ma'aseh, Eid Echad on different Ma'aseh, but in the same style of Ma'aseh. The woman completely denies it and says that she has Oivim. And the Oivim are spreading rumors on her. It's not clear, the Bezdin, they wrote to the Tzemach Tzedek, it's not clear to them whether there are Oivim or there are no Oivim. But for the Koil, but there are two Eidim. Eid Echad on one Ma'aseh, Eid Echad on a different Ma'aseh, on the same type of Ma'aseh, but on two. And there's also a Koil, which we're not sure if it's from Oivim or not. The Tzemach Tzedek starts by bringing a Shas Tshuvas Ma'alam Lublim Siman Pei regarding Eishes Kohen, that there was a Koil that she is mezana with her landlord. And they says over there that the Ma'alam Lublim paskins that she's not Asura, unless there's Eidei Tumah. It's not enough just to have Eidei Kiyur, even with a Koil L'Loi Pasik. So over here, the Tzemach Tzedek says, over here in this case, we don't have Eidei Tumah. And therefore, Min Hadin, she does not become Asur.
The code pasuk is Kiyur or what's it called?
Mizana.
Same.
Huh? Mizana, yeah. So Tzemach Tzedek first of all says over here she has no Eidei Tumah. Second, and therefore min adin she should not become Asur. Second of all, the whole suffix if the koil should be accepted b'chal or not. Why? Because she has oivim. And the mashmos, the Gemara, Tzemach Tzedek explains, the mashmos in the Gemara is that whenever there are oivim, we are choishesh, we are, as a bezdin, we have the obligation to be choishesh that maybe they release the koil. We don't have to know and investigate whether they actually release the koil or not. The moment we know there's oivim, it's already enough to do it, to invalidate the koil. As Tzemach Tzedek says, and even though there are those that hold that you have to know that the oivim were the ones that released the koil, the ma'isa al pi din, Tzemach Tzedek passes, you don't need it. So therefore, the ma'isa right now we don't have a koil. All we have is Eidei Kiyur. Eidei Echad on one, Eidei Echad on the other, the same style of ma'isa Kiyur. Then Tzemach Tzedek goes and says, even in Eidei Kiyur we have a suffix. Why? Because even though the Shulchan Aruch says that that locking a locked door is the example of a kiyur, one of the examples of a kiyur, lav dafka that it's so. That's such a serious kiyur. It says from the Maram Lublin, it's mashma. It's not such a serious kiyur that should be in the same category as seeing them naked or something like that. He says, Lamaisa, it's hard for me to go against the Shulchan Aruch. Tzemach Tzedek says it's not completely a kiyur because the Shulchan Aruch does compare it. So we do have to consider it a kiyur, but we have to figure out a way to undo these eidim. So he says, Sataka, you have eidim on this ma'isa kiyur, they locked themselves in a room. But over here, you don't have two eidim. You have an eidei echad on one ma'isa kiyur, and you have an eidei echad on another ma'isa kiyur, and there are enough shittas that you can't combine the two together. And even on the Behuda and the Mashmos the Ramah is that there you do combine two eidim, two separate ma'isa kiyur to do it. This is only for the element of Asura Leba'al, not for Asura Leba'al, to force him to divorce her. Could be that this is enough. He says this is enough that we could use these two eidei kiyur together only for the purpose of preventing the boil from marrying her down the line. That's enough to make the boil a problem, not enough to make her Asura Leba'al. Two different times, yeah. So even though there are shittas that are machmer, even in such a scenario here, we could be mitzaref we could mitzaref a mekel. This is essentially what the Tzemach Tzedek says in Ois Aleph, and it continues in Ois Beis. It may be because she's a Eishes Koyen, we should be machmer. So he says, no, Maram Lublin himself discusses the Eishes Koyen, and he's not machmer. And it's mashma from the Alter Rebbe, as he brings from the Chuvas as Alter Rebbe, that if you have, also you don't need, even in the case of an amasel, it's the Alter Rebbe is talking about, you don't have to be machmer more by Eishes Koyen than by Eishes Yisrael. The Tzemach Tzedek, the Alter Rebbe brings it from Chuvas Maimonides. The Tzemach Tzedek brings the raya from it from the Rashba. And the logic behind it is something which is asur to the whole Bnei Yisrael. We're not machmer by a kohen more than by a something which by Klal Yisrael will be mutter. Sorry, Klal Yisrael will be mutter. Only by a kohen will be asur. We will not be machmer by a kohen more than we'll be machmer by a Yisrael. So now the eidim question mark. The koil is cancelled. What do we have left? Before the koil mezana and before the eidim, there's still a beside Aglaim Ladavar. She's friendly with him for a whole year. So therefore, what's going to be so what's the issue over here? First, we have an Isur Yichud. She was in Siachid with the Shem's Nus. Yeah. She was a siachid with there's a koil, she's friendly with him, and we know from the base Shmuel and Siman Zayin by a shvu, if she was a siachid with a guy, she's asura. So Tzemach Tzedek says that what the Beis Shmuel is talking about in Siman Zayin is talking about to let her lechatchila marry a kohen. Or that she's with a guy, or that she was nisyach. They spoke about znus, and right afterwards they were nisyachet. But stam yichud is not enough. And he says, Tzemach Tzedek says, and even though the Beis Shmuel is talking about nisyachet with a guy, same thing applies if she was nisyachet with somebody who's parutz. And the lashon of Tzemach Tzedek, Imkein hu adinim Yisrael hayodua she'eina misnaig bekashus. And so he says, and we can't use this Beis Shmuel that yichud should be enough to make it aser for three reasons. He says, first of all, the Beis Shmuel didn't see the shita mikubetzes. Yeah, and then he says he brings another two rais. And Tzemach Tzedek, but I'm not going to go into it. I don't have enough time to it now. And I always say that Tzemach Tzedek goes that all this is whether the bezdin is mechayev him to divorce her, but Mikol Malkim is mitzvah on him to megarish her, and if he's not moitzir, is considered a rasha. Yeah, I didn't want to go into that part because that part is relevant to what I discussed in the previous year, because it's more relevant to different siman. I want to more discuss about the idea of when do we consider a kiyur, how to essentially undid the kiyur and the koil. Koil was only mitzad the yichud that Tzemach Tzedek went to the chayra, he should divorce her. But even mitzad the edim, you can't mitzad them only to asura leba'al, but not to make him divorce her. The koil doesn't work because it's oivim, and you don't need to know that the oivim actually released the koil. Tzemach Tzedek paskins ladina. It's enough if you know that there are oivim that could have released the koil.
What was it you mentioned about from that anything that's moved by Yisrael?
By Yisrael, she's Nansa.
Yeah,
She's Teres L'Baila.
By a
Kohen, she's Aser, right? So if there's an amasla that we would use by a Yisrael, we're not going to be more machmer by a kohen to say we're not going to accept that amasla. We're not going to be double machmer on the kohen. Which means
amasla we accept by Yisrael in case it was B'Tzena?
Yeah. We think it was B'Tzena. She says she gives an amasla, so in such a case, that's some of the Alter Rebbe says we're not going to be machmer by a kohen more than by Yisrael. So therefore, over here also he says just because she's married to a kohen, you should not be machmer.
Why is someone have to be all these things? Isn't marriage exactly the case, besides for the fact that they're coming after a year, the case of marriage is exactly the case of Tzedek, no?
The same case as what?
As Tzedek.
Right.
It's even less than Tzedek. I mean,
Tzemach Tzedek had three things. He had three problems. There was a koil that she's friendly with him for a year. There was Edim on two separate Ma'aseh Kiyurs, Eid Echad in each one. And there was a koil. And there was a koil Mezana. The Maram didn't have the Raglayim L'Dover. The Maram L'Blin had a case, there was a koil that she was Mezana. That's it. Yeah, okay. The rest is I want to talk about Siman Yud Gimel, Oit Chazoin Lamoyed, and the end continuation of this week we will go into Siman Yud Gimel. And Siman Yud Gimel is probably, I see now it's probably going to be 2 shiurim. I'll split it into 2 also. And at least I'll deal with the first topics in Siman Yud Gimel. Next shiur, Mitzvah Hashem.